Let's be real for a second. If you've got less than $100,000 saved right now, there's this quiet feeling that just won't fully go away. You're getting by, covering bills, handling life, but underneath, something feels off. Not panic, not obvious fear, just a subtle awareness that time has kept moving and your finances didn't quite keep pace the way you thought they would. And that thought, it shows up when everything else gets quiet. You've worked, stayed consistent, tried to make responsible choices. So it's only natural to ask, how did things land here? Not terrible, but not strong either. Somewhere in the middle. And honestly, that middle is where most people live. Stable enough to function, but not secure enough to feel fully in control. It looks fine on the surface, but the moment you think about the future, it starts to feel uncomfortable. Because this isn't just about a number, it's about what that number represents. Years of decisions isn't just about a number, it's about what that number represents. Years of decisions, habits, and beliefs about money that were formed long before you ever earned your first dollar. You were told to work hard, save what you can, and avoid unnecessary risks. That builds discipline, sure, but it doesn't always build growth. It keeps you steady, but it doesn't necessarily move you forward. And that's the part most people never question. They assume effort alone will eventually fix everything. But over time, it becomes clear something's missing. Effort without direction only gets you so far. Because money doesn't respond to effort alone. It responds to how you think about it, how you position yourself around it, and how you make decisions that allow it to grow beyond your time. And if no one ever showed you that, it's easy to spend years doing the right things without seeing the results you expected. That realization can be uncomfortable. It forces you to look differently, to question habits that once felt safe, to admit that what you've been doing might not take you where you actually want to go. And that's exactly why most people avoid it. They stick to what's familiar. They postpone the deeper questions. They tell themselves they'll figure it out later, and without realizing it, they stay on the same path, hoping for a different outcome. But here's where things can shift. The moment you face your situation honestly, without avoiding it, you gain something powerful: clarity. And clarity gives you the ability to make different decisions. You don't need to panic, you don't need to rush, but you do need to wake up to what's real, to understand where you stand, what's missing, and what needs to change if you want a different outcome. Because time is going to pass either way. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the difference won't come from how hard you worked. Time is going to pass either way. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the difference won't come from how hard you worked. It will come from whether you adjusted your thinking, whether you changed your approach, whether you chose to act differently. Most people won't. They'll hear this, feel something briefly, then drift back to what's comfortable. They delay change because it feels easier. And over time, that delay becomes permanent. But a few people take this differently. A few recognize this isn't just information, it's a turning point, a moment to pause, reassess, and take control of something that's been on autopilot for too long. Because where you are right now isn't the problem, it's the signal. A signal that something needs to change, not just in what you do, but in how you think, how you approach money, the direction you're moving in. What you're about to hear isn't meant to comfort you. It's meant to sharpen your awareness, to reveal what's been overlooked and what be possible once you start seeing clearly. And if you stay with it, something will begin to shift. Not overnight, not dramatically, but enough to change your direction. Because this moment isn't the end of your financial story. It's the point where you finally decide to take control of it. There is a condition many men find themselves in, not from sudden failure, but from gradual drift. It's not failure. It's not crisis. It's something much quieter. It's the state of being stable enough to continue, but not advanced enough to feel secure. And because it doesn't create urgency, it often goes unnoticed. A man in this position meets his responsibilities. He works, pays his bills, handles his duties. From the outside, everything looks. He works, pays his bills, handles his duties. From the outside, everything looks fine. He's steady, reliable, consistent. But underneath, there's a quiet awareness that something isn't progressing the way it should. This awareness doesn't show up as alarm. There's no panic, no visible stress. It's quieter than that. It appears in still moments when everything stops and the mind starts asking questions. In those moments, one question keeps returning, not loudly but persistently. Is this path actually leading forward or just maintaining what already is? Most people don't chase that question. They go back to routine because routine feels safe. It creates a sense of control, even when it doesn't create progress. It keeps you busy. It makes you feel like you're doing something, and it convinces you results will come eventually. But effort without direction doesn't guarantee progress. It creates movement, but not necessarily advancement. A man can stay active for years and still end up in the same place. Not because he didn't try, but because his actions weren't aligned with the result he wanted. There's a difference between stability and progress. Stability protects what you have, it prevents loss, it keeps things in order. But progress expands, it builds, it strengthens. And a lot of people confuse the two. They think because they're not going backward, they must be moving forward. Over time, that belief gets reinforced. Every uneventful year feels like proof that things are fine. But no problems doesn't mean growth is happening. You can stay exactly the same while appearing secure. That's how financial drift works, not from one big mistake, but from repeated small patterns. Tiny decisions made without intention, stacking over time. They don't hurt immediately, so they don't get questioned. But together they shape the outcome. A man chooses comfort over reflection, convenience over adjustment, familiarity over change. Each choice feels harmless on its own. There's no single moment where everything goes wrong. It's built slowly, through repetition. There are countless examples of people who stayed in this state for years. They weren't lazy. They weren't careless. They just kept following a path that didn't lead anywhere new. It's only when they stop and really look at their situation that something clicks. And in that moment, they realize their position wasn't just shaped by external factors, but by internal patterns. They see that what felt normal might not actually be enough for the future they want. That realization isn't comfortable, but it's necessary. Because from the outside, everything can still look fine, consistent, responsible, disciplined. But responsibility without direction maintained, it doesn't build. So the real question becomes, are you progressing or just maintaining? And if you answer that honestly, you start to see things clearly. There's a simple statement that can anchor this shift. I do not confuse stability with progress. I require growth in everything I do. It's a reminder that staying the same is not the goal. As this awareness grows, your perspective changes. You begin to see that your position isn't fixed. It's shaped by how you think and what you do, and that what once felt enough might actually be holding you back. There's usually resistance here. The mind prefers comfort, even when comfort limits growth. It tells you change isn't necessary, that things are good enough, that if you just keep going, it'll work out. But those thoughts need to be challenged, because if time hasn't produced the result you want, repeating the same pattern won't suddenly fix it. That realization takes courage. It means questioning years of habits. But once you start, something shifts. You become more aware, more intentional, more focused on outcomes, not just actions. You stop moving on autopilot, and that's where change begins. Other people may notice it too. A sharper focus, a stronger sense of direction, a willingness to question what used to be accepted. It's subtle but powerful. And it doesn't happen overnight. It starts with awareness, then examination, then adjustment. Each step builds on the last. Over time, your thinking becomes clearer. You stop settling for maintenance. You start aiming for growth. You begin asking better questions. Why am I doing this? Where is this leading? And those questions create intention. You move from passive living to active direction. You stop just maintaining your life and start shaping it. That's when the illusion breaks. Stability without growth is exposed for what it is, safe but stagnant. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start wanting more, not in a reckless way, but in a deliberate one. Growth, movement, progress, and it all begins with awareness. because real change doesn't start with action. It starts with seeing clearly. From there comes examination. From examination comes adjustment. And from adjustment comes a new direction. At that point, you're standing at a decision. Continue as you are or change your path. And once you truly see the choice, you can't ignore it. That's the moment drift ends and direction begins. Before a man ever earns his first dollar, before he makes a single financial decision, there are already ideas forming in his mind about money. What it is, how it should be handled, what role it plays in life. These ideas aren't always taught directly. They're absorbed through observation, conversations, and repeated exposure. A child watches the people around him. He hears how money is talked about, whether it's scarce or abundant, whether it's feared or respected, whether it's something to protect or something to grow. Those impressions settle in early, and over time, they become beliefs. Quiet, automatic beliefs that guide decisions without needing conscious thought. So when a person starts earning, he doesn't start from zero. He acts based on what he already believes is right. Most people are taught discipline. Work hard, be careful. Avoid waste. That creates structure, but not necessarily growth. It teaches preservation, not multiplication. And there's a difference. Protecting money keeps what you have. Directing money grows it. If someone is only taught to protect, they'll hesitate to direct. They'll avoid loss, but also miss opportunity. And that limitation often goes unnoticed. They believe they're being responsible, but despite their effort, their position barely changes. Not because they're doing nothing, but because they're following a pattern that doesn't lead to expansion. That's why so many people, after years of working, quietly wonder why they're still in the same place. They did what they were told. But the result didn't match the expectation. And that's where deeper understanding begins. Consider someone who was taught to treat money as something fragile, something to guard, to limit, to avoid losing. That mindset prevents recklessness, but it can also prevent growth. Now compare that to someone who learned to see money as a tool, something direct, to position, to grow. Same effort, different belief, completely different outcome. The key is this: beliefs aren't permanent. They can be examined, adjusted, replaced, but only if you're aware of them. That's where the shift begins. You start questioning, where did my beliefs come from? Are they actually working? Do they align with the future I want? Do they align with the future I want? A simple statement can guide this. I examine and reshape every belief I hold about money, because change doesn't start with action. It starts with understanding. And once you see your patterns clearly, you can begin to change them. At first, it feels unfamiliar, but over time, new patterns form. Stronger ones, more intentional ones, and people will notice. They'll see someone who thinks differently, acts differently, moves with purpose. That shift changes everything, including the opportunities that come your way. Because money doesn't just respond to effort, it responds to awareness. And once you gain that, you're no longer just earning, you're building. There's a common belief that goes unchallenged, and it keeps most people stuck. The idea that earning money and building wealth are the same thing. They're not. Earning is necessary. It's where everything starts, but it's not what creates growth. What matters is what happens after you earn. That's where direction comes in. Direction is deciding where your money goes, what it does, and whether it comes back with more. Most people earn, but don't direct. Their money flows through habits, bills, and immediate needs. It gets spent, saved randomly, or just bills and immediate needs. It gets spent, saved randomly, or just circulates. And in that cycle, nothing really changes. They stay stable, but don't get stronger. Now compare that to someone who earns and directs. Even with less income, they assign purpose, they invest, they allocate, they think long term, and over time that difference compounds. It's not about how much you make, it's about how you use what you make. There's a statement that captures this shift. I don't just work for money, I make money work beyond my time. That's the mindset that builds. And once you adopt it, everything starts to change. You pay attention, you track, you decide with intention, and slowly your money stops disappearing and starts growing. That's when real movement begins. Not when income increases, but when direction does. There's no lasting financial change without a shift in thinking. You can act differently for a while, But if your mindset stays the same, you'll fall back into old patterns because results don't come from one decision. They come from repeated ones, small choices, over and over, shaping your outcome. So if you want to change your results, you have to change how you decide. You have to move from automatic behavior to intentional action. Pause. You have to move from automatic behavior to intentional action. Pause. Think. Choose. Ask yourself, what does this decision lead to? Does it align with where I want to go? That's how habits turn into strategy. And strategy creates results because money responds to clarity. The clearer your decisions, the stronger your outcomes. And the people who understand this don't rely on bursts of motivation. They rely on consistency in thinking. What you have just listened to was only the first half of this lecture. Access the full lecture through the first link in the description. By the way, hey, I'm John, the founder of this channel. I started this channel and wanted to stay in the background and keep the main focus on the message of this channel. But as our community continues to grow, I decided to step forward and take responsibility for building something bigger around these ideas. So yeah, nice to meet you. I'm Jan, and don't forget to check out the full lecture through the first link in the description.